Welcome back to Light the Fuse, the only podcast about Mission Impossible on the internet, and I mean, basically your one-stop shop for all things Mission Impossible. Would you say that you would agree with that, Charles?
Hello, yes, I would.
This is Charles Head.
I feel like you're really chilling out with these intros. You used to be so excited.
Time has worn me down. We've done so many of these episodes already.
I feel like maybe the 80s show broke you.
I think it did. But we're continuing our Making a Mission series, and we are continuing with the first movie. Please listen to the other episode before you get into this one, because it'll be very helpful and covers a lot of pre-production and production on the movie. And now we're getting into some of the nitty-gritty.
Yeah. So let's talk about stunts for a second. Just even back then, it's mentioned that Tom Cruise's favorite hobbies include skydiving, car racing, and stunt piloting small aircraft. And regarding stunt work, Cruise has a quote. He says, "What we actually did was I had a stunt guy who would go through it a number of times and work the kinks out. He'd give me a scale of how painful each stunt was going to be. Then I'd jump in and get the final pounding, as it were." This is exactly what Jackie Chan has been doing with his stunt team since the 1980s. So I find that very interesting. It's another kind of parallel with him and Jackie Chan in the way that, because Jackie Chan would always have his stuntmen do the stunt for him a couple of times, because he has the whole JC stunt team. And they would do the stunt for him, and then he would know. He said it would help him mentally.
Just to see it.
Yeah, and to know that it's possible. And then he's like, okay, I can do that. And, you can sort of assess it that way.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So let's get into post-production. So the editor on this movie was Paul Hirsch, who had done 9 other De Palma movies before this, and who came back to the franchise for Ghost Protocol.
Yeah, love him. Love his work.
And that the film was originally going to open with a scene that established the love triangle. We were talking about this on the last episode, and that it took the audience out of the genre, according to early test audiences. But this is the first that we have heard about of this research, and we speculate that the reshot stuff at Pinewood was this sequence. The cold open now, as it stands, is this sequence.
Yeah, that's what we're wondering. I'd have to watch again to see how much they show of her, because
she's just top half. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I mean, it is. Yeah. It's interesting to think about the love triangle being more established in the opening scene, and I'm pretty glad that it's not that way.
Yeah. I mean, the love triangle is not very much a part of this movie. It stands now.
It's pretty minor.
Because they cut out
it's not really that necessary.
Yeah, and they cut out a sex scene, which... Yeah. But it's also interesting that they went back to Pinewood. I feel like nowadays you go to, like, the studio... Like, you'd go to Paramount or something, or you'd go... Okay. You know what I mean? But they
went
reconvened,
back to, yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
As we've talked about before on the show, even in our Lauren Balfe interview, Alan Silvestri, who scored Back to the Future, Predator, Forrest Gump, he originally scored the film, but his music went over poorly with test audiences. Silvestri was then fired, and he ended up reusing some of the elements of the score for the 1996 Arnold Schwarzenegger film Eraser. So this is in Hollywood Reporter on February 26th, 1996. Danny Elfman officially replaces Alan Silvestri. So February 26th to May 22nd, that's the amount of time that Elfman had to score, to record, get everything for that score to get the movie done in time. And maybe actually before May 22nd, because they've got a premiere probably a week before that and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Elfman earlier this year and asked him about it. I was trying to get sort of like juice out of him. Like, it was terrible, but he said it was really fun. It was a quicker turnaround than he had on Justice League, which is insane because I think he wrote that in like 2 or 3 weeks. And I asked him about why the plot was so important, and he was just like, he just said, you don't really know why these themes resonate, but, they just do. There's something sort of primal about it, and he didn't really think about not using the plot.
I love his use of the plot,
too.
Yeah,
that's great.
Just listening to the score recently, when we talked to Mo Shafiq, I revisited the whole score on the soundtrack release, and he weaves the plot in there in really subtle ways, and just right from the beginning, right from the opening scene, it's just wonderful.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
They did a great job.
U2 was asked to create a version of the theme for the movie, but they turned it down because they were about to start recording an album. However, bassist Adam Clayton decided that he and drummer Larry Mullen Jr. would have time to do it on the side. So Clayton put together his own version in New York City, and Mullen did his in Dublin on weekends between U2 recording sessions. The two musicians then came together to finish both versions. At the time, they were influenced by the European dance club sounds that U2 had been experimenting with Brian Eno under the name they had a band that was called the Passengers, which I don't know, a lot of people don't know about that, but Brian Eno and U2 had this other band in the mid-90s called the Passengers. So Clayton and Mullins submitted the two versions to Polygram to pick their favorite, but it turned out Polygram wanted both. So both tracks are on the soundtrack release, though only one plays during the closing credits of the movie. So I wanted to ask you, which version do you think it is? Because I feel like Adam's version won because it's pretty bass heavy, and the other one is kind of more percussion.
Yeah, I didn't realize that they were separate because they were always credited. Weren't they always the
I mean, they did it together, like, you know,
right?
Because like, they each started their own version and then they finished it together. Is what they said. But
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I mean, on the soundtrack, there's another track that's another version of the Mission Impossible theme. I think it's called like Mission Accomplished or something like that. It's on the soundtrack, not the score release, and that version's not in the movie.
Right. It was on the single. I'll tell you that.
But the main version that's in the movie had a music video,
right?
If you recall, where they had all the TVs set up, where I think Adam and Larry are like performing the song, and their TVs showing clips from the movie. It's one of those classic soundtrack music videos from the 90s.
So the promotion of this movie, February 13th, 1996, Hollywood Reporter announced that Marvel and Paramount have done a multi-year deal to do comics based on their properties, including Mission Impossible and Star Trek. But Star Trek could have the likenesses of the actors. Mission Impossible, not so much, which is why, what's interesting about this report is that Cruise was supposedly unhappy with the look of his character, but it wasn't supposed to be.
I think there was. Well, we'll get into it more when we do it, because so it was like Marvel presents Paramount Comics was how it worked, and there's a prequel comic book. It's actually a prequel to the first movie, and Marvel released it. We have a copy of it, and we're going to do an episode about the comic books because there were also some comic books in the 60s that followed the characters from the original TV series. The prequel to the movie is interesting, though, because it leads you to believe that Kittredge will be the bad guy in the movie, but it also covertly gives you more backstory as to why Phelps would turn out to be the bad guy and turn his back on the IMF. So it's like they do a lot of fun things in the comic book that we'll get into when we do the episode. But it also, the comic has little bonus stories in the back of the issue where it shows how Luther and Krieger got disavowed. So there's a lot of fun stuff to chew in.
Yeah, I like that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that more when we do our comic books episode.
So we love a good product placement. We love the BMW product placement in the later movies. It's one of our favorite aspects of some of these movies. Apple dropped $15 million for the MI sponsorship deal, but it didn't really work out. And it's hard. I think maybe some of our listeners were maybe too young or not alive at all when Apple was going through its difficult 90s period with products like the Newton and things like that. It was not the cool computer company it is today. And it didn't work out for them. I mean, Ethan Hunt uses the PowerBook 5300C in the movie, but another character insists on using a different brand when they need computing power. Is that true?
Yeah, doesn't Luther talk about some other computer?
Yeah.
I don't know. This is all... I'm not sure where I came across this. This is a bit of research that I don't have quite credited. I'm not sure where it's from.
And the movie was released only weeks after a PowerBook recall, meaning the company was unable to satisfy whatever demand Mission Impossible might have created for its products. But do you remember those? Well, you'll get into this, but you remember the full page Apple ads? Yeah,
they had a bunch of ads, and some of them said, "quote If you've seen the movie, you might want to read the book," in reference to Apple's PowerBook.
That's terrible.
Really not a great.
It's not based on a book at all.
But yeah, so then there was also the web adventure game on the Mission Impossible website. Which was already being accessed 125,000 times a day as of a month before the movie's release. That's according to the Hollywood Reporter on April 19th, 1996.
Oh, we're going to get into that website, too.
Yeah. We have our video games episode that we'll get to, and we'll talk about the old web adventure game. There's also the novelization by Peter, I'm going to mess up his name, Barsocchini. Or Barsocchini. There are a few very positive customer reviews on Amazon for this novelization, including this one from 1998. Quote, "This book ruled. It was much better than the movie. The part where they try and recover the knock list in the CIA was fully detailed. A must read." End quote.
We had
thought I wanted to share
this book,
I
right?
do.
Yeah.
I had this book when I was a kid, and then I tracked it down online. It's very easy. You can get it for $1 on Amazon. But we're gonna dig into this book a little bit too, and see if it reveals any other details that maybe were in earlier versions of the movie or anything like that. So, but we'll get to that novelization another day.
So right before the movie came out, Robert Towne gave an interview with the LA Times, and he said, "I'm feeling like a kid these days because I've been working with Tom Cruise. I've never experienced anything like Mission Impossible. It has been so easy. Tom made me feel like I had been doing something wrong all those years because this was so great. It was a real challenge, but Tom commandeered me. To see that much skill in the service of an old TV classic is truly amazing. I think it's as good as filmmaking gets, and its Mission Impossible owes a lot to Tom's unusual performance." Want to break this down a little bit?
There's a lot to talk about
Yeah.
here.
By all accounts, not a very easy movie to make. Up and down the board. I mean,
But he's excited.
He's excited
with the release coming out.
People had fun, but it sounds like there was some hurt feelings. There were some difficulties during production, but
also that he says Tom's unusual performance.
What is so unusual about that performance?
I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe because the intensity of it. I mean, he takes it. It's not like this isn't like a wink nod type adaptation, you know. I mean, this is coming off. I mean, I guess The Fugitive was very serious though too. I mean,
but
Maverick obviously was a winky type, you know, more comedic approach, but that's what that show was.
Yeah.
So I don't know why he says it's an unusual performance.
Yeah, I mean, there have been serious shows certainly at this time and later, that 21 Jump Street and things like that, which took a comedic approach, but
yeah,
I'm not really sure what's very unusual. It's a great movie star performance that we love to this day.
Yeah. So around the time of the release, Kristen Scott Thomas had a nice quote. She said, "I die on page 25, but I die in the arms of Tom Cruise, so it's worth it."
Also, probably where the residuals that she's still getting from that. On the day of the movie's release, there's a quote from Brian De Palma in Variety that said, "You're barraged with digital sound systems in your movie theater. You're bludgeoned to death with things coming out of the ceiling and the floor. There's a temptation to just fill in every sound you can, whether it's people walking across the floor or crickets or sea sounds or whatever, because of the spectrum that's at your command. People have forgotten about silence in the movies. Let me tell you, it's a stunning color to use." This is really interesting for a number of reasons.
I love this quote. I love it because I love the 9-minute silent sequence in the middle of the movie. Nobody does this, and it's so true. And this has only gotten more true.
Yeah, well, we were just talking about Roma, which has this amazing soundscape, but also the fact that he was, classmates with Spielberg and Lucas and all these techno guys who were like really filling every second with new sound and obsessed with digital technology and THX and all this stuff. And he was like, cool it. Let's just do this.
Yeah. We both have seen the new Alfonso Cuarón movie Roma, and they use hundreds of audio tracks. Yeah, it's actually amazing. It's really really incredible the way they use sound. But it is true though that people don't use silence anymore.
No. And he's such he was seemingly much more interested in technology maybe later. Famously, the character, the kid in Dress to Kill is based on De Palma and things like that. But he seems to have taken it back.
Yeah, as we talked about De Palma in the last episode and about how much this is a De Palma movie, we should have mentioned about the voyeurism, that this is a man who, I don't know how old he was he maybe a teenager when he was videotaping his father having an affair?
Yeah.
He got proof of his father having an affair. So that's why the voyeurism is very personal to Brian De Palma.
Yeah.
I feel like we've never mentioned that on this show. If anybody doesn't know,
watch the documentary.
Watch the De Palma documentary. It's fantastic. So back to the promotion of the movie. A week after the movie's release, Tom Cruise tells The Hollywood Reporter, quote, "I sat in a room 3 years ago and said I'd like to make a movie out of Mission Impossible and see if I can make a thinking man's action movie. I enjoy movies with very complex stories. I love The Third Man. I thought it would be a lot of fun to try to put that in this genre. I remember as a kid when I saw The Sting, I had to see it a couple of times to figure it out. I was a young boy and my father took me, but I loved that about that movie." And I say, this is Charles now talking.
Okay. We're talking.
I love that about Mission Impossible, the first movie.
Do you think he was kind of on the defensive a little bit?
Maybe.
Was this during it's too complicated claims?
I think so.
Have you watched the Third Man or The Sting with your father?
My dad actually showed me The Sting.
Oh, okay.
He did show me The Sting when I was in high school, or I don't think it was middle school. So yeah, in my early teen years, I think he showed me The Sting, and I love that movie. So I do think about my father when I think of The Sting.
Have you talked to your dad about this podcast yet?
Yeah, he knows about it,
but he hasn't listened.
He hasn't. No, he hasn't
No,
listened.
okay.
But I'll check in with him. I think I'll see how he's doing.
So at the premiere in Westwood, there was an after party where they recreated some of the sets. The facade of the London Tower Bridge and a helicopter landing pad served as the dance floor. Do we have any? Have you found any pictures?
I have not found pictures, but it sounds pretty awesome.
Also, Apple computers were there, so you could send Mission Impossible postcards via email to friends. So Town, Kep, and Zalian were all there. De Palma not there.
Right.
So what do we think about that? Did things sour towards the end?
I don't know. I mean, as we'll see, there's a quote coming up from De Palma that sort of counters, but at the time it sounded like there's friction, and De Palma, I don't know what happened, but to have all three writers there, Zalian, and Kep and Town, is pretty cool. And,
it's pretty rare too.
Right.
Yeah.
So on June 2nd, 1996, there's a report in the Hartford Courant that De Palma disappeared the day before he was set to begin 2 days of press interviews. Studio executives were stunned and embarrassed, to say the least. So this is a week. This report is from a week or two after the release of the movie. But then on June 4th, the LA Times talks with De Palma, and he says he's very happy with how things turned out, and, quote, Tom did a fabulous job of producing. He also says he doesn't think he'd come back for a sequel. He's not ready to make that another commitment like that.
Well,
so I mean, it sounds like De Palma's something happened. He was not happy, but he was able. He at least came out publicly in support of the movie and said he was happy with how it went and that Cruise did a great job. So maybe it was a clash with Paramount. Maybe it wasn't Cruise.
Yeah, and he also has.
Or he's just playing nice in the press. I don't know.
Yeah, and he has a very kind of mixed history with press junkets.
Right.
The Body Double press junket famously was sort of a witch hunt, and so he probably is not super thrilled with press junkets, and I could see him kind of shying away for that reason too.
Yeah.
Especially if he got word that people were like, it's too confusing, and he didn't want to answer questions for 2 days about why it was so confusing. But regardless, it set a record in 1996 for opening in more theaters than any movie before, over 3,000. Typically today, movies can be in up to 5,000 theaters.
But at this time, this was the first movie to get 3,000.
And it broke the record for top Wednesday opener, taking over for T2, which was a huge movie back in the day. In its first 6 days, the movie earned $75 million, breaking the record held by Jurassic Park. And Cruise deferred his usual $20 million paycheck for a hefty percentage of the box office, which paid off handsomely. I've heard numbers around like $75 million is what he ended up taking home from that.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
No wonder he likes his franchise.
Yeah. Get those points.
So Sherry Lansing says in response to critics, quote, "We did research. Audiences did not find it confusing," end quote. This is from the New York Times, May 28th, 1996. So, yeah, it just seemed like everybody's kind of reacting to everybody talking about how it's too complicated. The cinema score, which is the reaction, audience reaction, the percentage of people who graded it an A or B was 87%. All the grades for males, females, different ages ranged from B to A, nothing lower than a B. So audiences were loving this movie, as of course you and I were.
Yeah, well,
and I'm sure a lot of you people out there were as well.
But not everybody loved it. Peter Graves says he was owned a percentage of the show, and that he may take Paramount to court. Did we ever find out if he followed through on these?
I don't know.
Okay,
but that's the day after the release of the movie, according to Variety.
Well, June 10th, 1996, Time magazine quotes him as saying, "I'm ticked. They made Jim Phelps very evil. I nurtured him and made him a heroic figure. This is just bizarre to me." Like, this whole thing.
Peter Graves is coming out in the press.
He's coming out in the press.
Multiple outlets.
I don't know why he can't just kind of let it go and understand they were doing something different.
Yeah, I mean,
he has a lot of ownership over this character, I guess.
Yeah, well, and Peter Lupus, who was Willie from the old show, he actually wrote a glowing review for TV Guide in July 1996.
Wow.
So, Peter Lupus took the high road.
While not doing gay porn, he took the high road. Yeah.
He did gay porn?
Well, he did gay. Okay.
We'll get into it when we do the making of the old show.
So in 2006, inspired by Mission Impossible, a helicopter successfully flew through a tunnel in Brazil. And they're saying that this is inspired by Mission Impossible?
Yeah, they did it. They wanted to do it. So anybody who thinks it's too ridiculous,
Go to Brazil.
These Brazilian geniuses were like, hey, you think the first movie's too complicated and that it's not possible to fly a helicopter through a tunnel? I'll show you.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the work they did.
Yeah. God bless you. We'll find pictures. I'm sure there's pictures of that. Yeah.
According to dossiers on the Blu-ray edition of Mission Impossible.
Can we bring up that you really got into this after Patrick told you that he was a Midwestern boy?
Yes, yeah. Patrick Willems, in our interview with him, we asked him about why he said he was from the Midwest and where he got that from. So this is actually in the movie too. You see it. Like I think Patrick mentioned this. If you pause the movie, you'll see it on the computer screen when Kittredge is tracking Hunt. It says that he was born in Madison, Wisconsin, and raised on a family farm. So that much we know. But get this from the dossiers on the Blu-ray edition.
I'm listening.
Quote, he developed a talent for disguise by assuming various personalities during childhood play to combat the seclusion of farm life. He studied linguistics and theater and drama at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Upon graduation, he attended CIA Training Academy in Virginia and developed a friendship with his roommate, Jack Harmon.
What?
Though lack of physical evidence exists, he is assumed to have perpetrated the largest ever class prank by impersonating his academy commanding officer at the promotion ceremony and refusing to shake hands with the graduates. This prank brought Hunt to the attention of IMF supervisor Jim Phelps, who recruited him for the Duhart operation in Versailles, France. He's been a member of Phelps' task force ever since. His skills and intelligence have led to him being groomed by Phelps to take over the Phelps task force. His first action as Phelps' protege was to recruit research expert Sarah Davies, who is a former classmate from the University of Wisconsin.
Wait.
So there's a lot to talk about here. I don't know if this came up, they wrote this for the Blu-ray release, or, I mean, this is, most of this, like, the information they have is just like a profile, and it's like a copy of what you see on the screen, which is his profile in the first movie. So I don't know if they were given all that stuff from the first movie, which were probably just like props, or and then they put it all into this thing on the Blu-ray, or if they're embellishing and adding to it. But there's a lot of extra stuff here, and maybe the novelization, we'll get into this when we read the novelization of the first movie. But so Emilio Estevez's character Jack Harmon is Ethan Hunt's roommate at the FBI Academy.
CIA Training.
CIA
Training Academy. Yeah.
And then also Sarah Davies, who is Kristen Scott Thomas,
right,
was his former classmate from the University of Wisconsin. Yeah, I mean, and this, it's crazy. They have a whole bio written up for Jim Phelps too, which takes into account everything he did on the 60s show and the 80s show, and even says he took over for Dan Briggs. So it's kind of fun. Dig into your Blu-rays and check out the dossiers for each of these characters.
Yeah, it feels like we should do like the official like canonical Mission Impossible wiki or something. It feels like, it doesn't feel like Star Wars. There's things that are canon.
Right.
We've got to make sure that people know that Ethan Hunt was a drama major at the University of Wisconsin. I also love that a class prank. Which almost makes it seem like he kind of developed the mask technology himself or something.
Yeah, maybe he revolutionized the mask.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun to think about. I mean, the only thing we can really confirm from the movie, I think, is that he was Madison, Wisconsin.
Farm.
That
Ethan
Hunt is a farm boy from Wisconsin. So maybe we'll get more information.
What do you think about it? Them calling the team the Phelps Task Force?
Yeah, I don't know. That's
pretty alpha, I think. Pretty aggressive.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge all of our sources.
Right.
We've said a lot of them, but any that we didn't say, we pulled from Paramount's production notes for the movie, articles from Variety, Hollywood Reporter, other newspapers and magazines around the time of the release, notes from AMC, which is the TV channel AMC.
Yeah.
There's a Yahoo article from 2015 that's the 50 impossibly awesome facts about Mission Impossible. We got a couple things from there. And then the special features on the Blu-ray. And that's where the bulk of our research is from.
We love those Blu-rays.
Yeah.
We're going to check out the 4Ks coming out, the box set.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of fun stuff coming up. We'll be tackling the digital release and the Blu-ray release of Fallout, and plenty of surprises and fun things and more interviews, and just keep listening.
Yeah. So for Charles Hood, this is Drew Taylor. Peace.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. And before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcasts@gmail.com. If you'd like to watch the original Mission Impossible television show, all 7 seasons are currently available to stream on Amazon Prime. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.